Why do some of the most alluring, likable, powerful, and strong people in the world have dark skin? All bodybuilding sports, including NBA athletics and the NFL, have been dominated by black athletes. The desire for white women to marry black guys is also on the rise today. White males who want to wed black women face the same restrictions. What makes that the case? Due to their superior DNA, black people are more handsome and have greater survival skills than the rest of the population. Because of their superior DNA, individuals of color have an advantage over other races and are considered a better choice by nature. Hello and welcome to yet another insightful video on black people's history. In this video, we will be looking at why black African people are said to have superior genes to all other races. Please be aware that the sole goal of this video is education. Racism or any other form of discrimination are not being encouraged in any manner. Let's start now. It's an interesting occurrence that emphasizes how closely heredity and physical performance are related, since African runners currently dominate the long-distance running world. Numerous theories have been put forth in an effort to explain the extraordinary success of these runners, including high cardiorespiratory fitness, higher hemoglobin concentration, good metabolic efficiency, muscle fiber composition, enzyme profile, diet, altitude training, and psychological aspects. In terms of physical and athletic performance, there is mounting evidence that genetics may have a role. The medium and long-distance running scene internationally underwent a significant transformation in the 1980s. Athletes from Europe used to dominate almost all running competitions. Only 30% of the top 20 worldwide came from Africa, with 50% coming from Europe. More lately, the proportion of elite European runners has dropped to 11%, while that of African athletes, of whom 55% are Kenyans, has increased to 85%. Cross-country, street, and middle and long-distance running are now dominated by African athletes. The European runners' declining running speed is not the reason they are losing ground. The truth is that African runners are moving more quickly. In general, the top 10 places in the international rankings and over 90% of all world records for middle and long-distance running are held by Kenyan and Ethiopian athletes. So the question is, what makes African runners the best in the world? People of color have demonstrated that they are more suited for survival. In the human world, we frequently talk about rules, morals, and justice. However, in the natural world, survival of the fittest applies. It doesn't matter who is more moral. Thought to be genetically endowed, are black people actually so? The answer is yes, in this case. Therefore, let's look more closely at sprinting. In 1968, a black guy named Jim Hines became the first person to break the 10-second barrier. Patrick Johnson, an Australian athlete of Aboriginal and Irish ethnicity, broke this record in 2003, becoming the first person of non-African descent to do so. Prior to that, only those of black descent had done so. Despite the fact that a lot of people think Aboriginal people should be classified black. However, only people of African heritage continued to break the 10-second barrier from 2003 to 2010. More than 70% of NBA basketball players are black. You will agree with me that black sportsmen have endearingly great heights, as well as other explosive abilities that have contributed to their success in this sport. Height is unquestionably a significant feature for any NBA athlete. With more than 70% of NFL players being black, American football is also an explosive sport. The record for the most Mr. Olympia championships in bodybuilding belongs to two black men, Lee Haney and Ronnie Coleman, who each won 8 of the competitions. Although Phil Heath, another black person, has had success in bodybuilding, Arnold Schwarzenegger was a great contender. For a while, he competed against Kai Green, another black person, demonstrating the superiority of black people in terms of physique. Why then are black people so gorgeous, powerful, and musculoskeletal? 5 arguments, in fact, provide the answer. These causes will be examined now. The first reason is power gene athletic ability and power are strongly influenced by genetics. A good illustration of this is the gene ACTN3. A protein that provides power and force is produced by ACTN3 called alpha-actinin 3. However, this gene has 2 forms: the good form, represented by the R allele, and the harmful form, represented by the X allele. One R allele and one X allele can still produce a lot of power, but not as much as the RR genotype. Having 2 copies of the R allele, one from the mother and one from the father, allows humans to produce tremendous power and force. Sadly, having 2 copies of the X allele greatly restricts the body's capacity to generate energy since it cannot synthesize enough alpha-actinin 3. It's interesting to note that Asians, who make up about 25% of the population, have the highest prevalence of the XX genotype. Around 18% of white people have the XX variant, compared to fewer than 1% of black people. Surprisingly, 99% of Africans have the healthy form of the gene that gives them more strength and power. Reason 2 is androgen receptors. Are you aware that without androgen receptors, your muscles won't develop properly? Androgen hormones, such as testosterone, which are necessary for the development of secondary sex traits and muscular growth, activate these receptors. The fascinating thing is that studies have revealed that individuals of African origin typically have higher androgen receptor sensitivity than other populations, which means they can easily and swiftly gain muscle mass. The mass of it puts them at a higher risk for some diseases, such as prostate cancer, even if it can be useful for gaining muscle. Before we go any further, let us know if you are enjoying this video. If so, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel to view more videos on the history, culture, and supremacy of Black people. Let's move on now. The third reason on our list is myostatin is a protein hormone that is created by our muscles. By regulating the quantity and size of muscle fibers, it is responsible for managing the growth and development of skeletal muscles. Myostatin, however, is not necessarily a friend to muscle-building sportsmen and bodybuilders. It inhibits the function of a protein called H.I.S, which is involved in muscle growth and protein synthesis, acting as a negative regulator of muscle growth. In other words, myostatin is undesirable to bodybuilders. Blacks naturally have gene mutations that affect the production of myostatin in their bodies, which might cause myostatin levels to drop. As a result, people may be more likely to develop and retain very large, powerful muscles. This condition is known as muscle hypertrophy. It's interesting to note that sub-Saharan Africans are more likely than other populations to have myostatin mutations, which may help to explain why many elite athletes from this region are able to develop their muscles and strength to such astounding levels. The fourth reason is genetic diversity. The only continent on Earth with the whole range of genetic variety is Africa. In other words, every type of gene may be found in Africa, and the process of gene strengthening continues when people with different strong genes marry and have offspring who have more dominant genes than they have. Africa has experienced this since the creation of the first human. Despite having a population of only 1.4 billion, Africa has a greater genetic diversity than the remaining 6 billion individuals in the globe. Genetic extremes are especially prevalent in Africa.
All right, I will prove it. So this is what you're going to do. When you're looking at DNA, you're not going to just look at any regular DNA. You're going to look at mitochondrial DNA, because that is the DNA of your mother. That is the DNA that goes all the way back to source. That is the one that you're going to look at. You're going to take the mitochondrial DNA of what they will call a Black American woman or an indigenous woman. Then you will take the mitochondrial DNA of an African woman, who you know is indigenous to Africa. Then you're going to take the mitochondrial DNA of every other woman out there, Native, Asian, European. And then you're going to look at them, and then you're going to find out that all the mitochondrial DNA from your Natives, your Europeans, your Asians are going to have more and similar with those of the African woman. But then you're also going to notice that while the indigenous American woman and the indigenous African woman have similar mitochondrial DNA, you'll find out that the mitochondrial DNA of the indigenous American woman is going to go back a lot further. It's a lot older. It's going to contain a lot more. So that's your proof on who's actually here. Because when you look into your DNA, like you're going to find us. We're not going to find you. Right? We're not 10%, we're not 20%, we're not 30% Europeans. Europeans have 30% of our DNA. Like when they do the DNA test and they say you're 10% Nigerian or you're 20% Nigerian. No, bro, 10% of Nigerians, 20% of Nigerians have your DNA. My people in America, you have to understand your DNA is of the oldest of the lands, is of the oldest of the planet. Your people are the ancestors to the ancestors. You are the living ancestors. So, there's the scientific proof. You go do it. And then you're going to find out what I'm telling you is correct. So, have one for day.
Okay, from Adam to Noah, to Shem, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the Most High said, "And Isaac's seed shall thy seed be called." And Isaac's seed is Jacob. And from Jacob was the 12 sons of Yasharahla. Okay? And with that, I'll say Shalom.